Everyone who finds himself here will have what's called a mind-body condition, chronic illness, chronic symptoms. And everybody will ask the same question: how did I get sick? How did I find myself here? Not just how did my body stop working properly, or why did this happen to me at all? Why am I dizzy? Why am I got fatigue? Why do I have pain, fibro? Why can't I think clearly? Why am I plagued with symptoms that doctors cannot explain? And the truth is that in mind-body illness, the condition is not, your experience is not random. It's not meaningless. It's not simply a brain misfiring or a body breaking down. It follows a pattern. It has logic. And understanding that logic is the first step towards healing. And healing is 100% possible. So here at the Mindful Gardener, we look directly at how we got sick, and we trace the origins of chronic symptoms to the deeper reality of the psyche, because it is a mind-body condition, not a brain-body condition. Not just the surface level functions of the brain. We show how trauma, repression, acculturation, poor attachment, and the burden of unprocessed emotion combine into what neuroscientists call the allostatic load, a backlog of unfinished cycles that eventually erupt through the body as symptoms. And this is the story of how we get sick, and hidden within it, the story of how we heal. First, let's clear up a common confusion. When people hear the word mind-body, many assume it means brain-body, as I mentioned earlier. They imagine symptoms as misfiring neural circuits or faulty wiring that can be retrained through repetition. But the brain is still the body. It's an organ. The brain is an organ like the heart or the lungs. It can be trained, it can be soothed and altered, but it's not the root of a mind-body condition. The root lies in the mind, the deeper mind, the psyche, and the psyche is where meaning lives. It's where we store emotions as well as in the body, in dreams and repressed experiences. It's where the shadow, this unconscious part of us, takes shape, and there'll be a lot of talk about that in this channel. And when the psyche cannot express something directly, it roots it through the body. And this is the essential insight. What the psyche cannot feel, the body must express. The story of mind-body illness often begins with trauma. And trauma is not just what happened to you, and it doesn't have to be a big single event. Trauma is what happens inside you as a result of what happened. It is the interruption of a natural process. The body, in a traumatic state presented with a challenge, will mobilize energy, rage, fear, grief, to respond to threat. But if the event overwhelms us, if we cannot act, if we are unsafe to complete this cycle, the energy gets interrupted and freezes. And the nervous system holds the charge in suspension. The psyche buries the memory to protect us, and the body keeps the score. And from that moment, this frozen energy just waits. It may lie dormant for years, even decades, but it never disappears, just disappears from view. And as a result, it shapes our personality, our defenses, and our choices. It's just waiting for a safe chance to finally finish what it started, to be released. But instead of release, we often layer more repression on top because we just don't know it's there. And repression is the psyche's emergency strategy. When emotions feel too threatening, anger at a parent, grief too overwhelming, fear too destabilizing, they are pushed down out of awareness. And this is possible because of the human's brain structure being unique. The prefrontal cortex is something that we have over every other mammal, and it gives us extraordinary power to override our natural instinct. And instinct is a key part of understanding what we're talking about here. We can silence our feelings, we can swallow our words, we can disconnect from our body and get on with it. Other animals discharge trauma immediately through trembling, shaking, or crying out. Humans have an option to hold it in, and it's meant to be temporary. And this is the problem. At first, repression feels like survival. We bury what we can't handle, but over time, this creates a huge backlog. It wasn't meant to be permanent. It's meant to just be holding, to wait until we can finally feel safe enough to complete what we started. and it gives us survival advantage, but we forget it's there. And every unfelt emotion is stored like an unfinished file in our system, in our mind and our body. Energy cannot be destroyed. That's one of the laws of physics. It cannot be destroyed. It can only be stored. It can't neither be made or destroyed. It can just be transformed. And meanwhile, it's stored. And the more we repress, the heavier and denser the backlog becomes. Neuroscientists use the term allostatic load to describe the cumulative burden of chronic stress, unfinished emotions, and repression. And each unprocessed experience adds to this load, which is in what we call the shadow, is in the unconscious. At first, the system compensates. We adapt, we push forward, and appear fine. And this can go on for years. But compensation is costly. Energy is diverted into holding things down and not available for us to regulate and live. The backlog becomes like too many open programs on a computer. The system slows down, memory gets clogged, processes slow and then stall. Eventually the system crashes, and this is when symptoms appear. So why do we repress so much in the first place? Well, obviously because of the culture we grow up in and the attachments we form. Children learn very quickly which emotions are acceptable and which are not to the people within whose group they live. A boy may learn that crying is weakness. A girl may learn that anger is unacceptable. Some children learn that any emotional need will be ignored or punished, so they silence themselves completely and just adapt to what other people find acceptable. Poor attachment, unpredictable, absent, or frightening caregivers make repression a default survival strategy. To keep this bond, the child exiles parts of themselves, and this exiling becomes the blueprint for adulthood. We grow up wearing masks, performing roles, becoming the acceptable version of ourselves, and suppressing what feels too risky to show. Carl Jung, the depth psychologist we base a lot of our work on here, called this mask the persona, and behind it, waiting, lies the true, authentic self. But the more we live inauthentically, the greater the shadow becomes, and eventually the body must speak for what the psyche, the mind, has had to silence, often, as I say, for decades. Jung described the shadow as everything we cannot or will not admit into consciousness. It contains the emotions we weren't able to feel, the anger, the grief, the terror, the shame, also sometimes joy, and also vitality, creativity, aspects of our true self, our true desires, our true skills. And when the shadow grows too dense, it does not simply disappear. It presses against the walls of the psyche, demanding expression that has been silenced for so long. And as a result, symptoms emerge as its emissaries. A headache may be repressed rage. Fatigue may be buried despair. Dizziness may be the psyche spinning from contradiction and being out of alignment with the life that should be truly ours. Each symptom is symbolic. It carries the shape of what was exiled. Symptoms are not meaningless. They are the shadow's language written into the body. And at some point when we've been repressing for so long, the system can no longer hold the backlog. Too much energy is being repressed and too much energy is being taken out of the system to repress it. The frozen trauma, the repressed emotion, and silent shadow erupt through the only channel available, the body. And symptoms appear as the embodiment of what we could not feel directly. They are not false alarms. They are the very emotions themselves, displaced now and disguised as symptoms. A spasm, a pain may be anger trying to release. Exhaustion may be grief finally weighing down the body and forcing us to turn inwards, stop and process this material. Anxiety may be the fear that was once forbidden, erupting into consciousness. And the symptom is the psyche's way of finishing what it started automatically. It is an attempt at resolution, not malfunction. It is the mind and the body trying to rebalance itself after years of being one-sided and misaligned. Why many brain-based models fail? Many of you will have tried them. Both myself and Helmut have, and before we realised what the true answer was. Because many approaches to mind-body conditions focus only on the brain. They treat symptoms as faulty wiring, bad circuits or maladaptive loops. The goal is to retrain the brain through repetition, visualization or cognitive override. And while these methods will bring some short-term or even total temporary relief for a short period of time, and more of that later, they miss the root. The charge is still held in the body and the mind, and it will have to come out at some point. And they mistake brain body for mind body. They think the mind is the brain. The brain is still the body. It's not the psyche. It's not the deeper, higher mind. And unless the psyche is met, unless the shadow is integrated, the backlog discharged through the body, so the nervous system no longer has to hold it, so it can be processed to completion and the energy restored to our system, which will, of course, then will re-regulate the nervous system, and plenty of that here about emotions as regulators. The symptoms will simply return in time, often in a different place. And this is why biohacking doesn't work. This is why brain retraining alone cannot cure you, because the problem is not your brain's faulty circuits. It is unfelt, emotional and shadow truth, which is now having to come back. Our instincts that we cut off and separated from. One of the most important insights in our work here is that emotion is not separate from regulation. Emotion is regulation. Anger sets boundaries, restoring safety. Grief allows recalibration after loss. Fear mobilizes energy for protection. When emotions flow, the nervous system cycles naturally. Dysregulation, you hear about a lot, is not the cause of symptoms. Dysregulation is the consequence of repression. Therefore, it is another symptom itself. And when emotions are silenced, the nervous system loses its rhythm. It becomes stuck in incomplete cycles, unable to return to baseline, waiting for us to allow it to complete. Symptoms are the body's attempt to restore that rhythm by forcing the emotion to be felt and forcing our attention back into the body, which is where emotions get processed. So how do we heal? If repression makes us sick, allowing heals. Healing does not come from overriding symptoms, managing them, silencing them, or forcing catharsis. It comes from allowing the body to feel what the psyche wants to refuse, what nature and exquisite intelligence naturally knows how to do. When symptoms arise, they are the emotion, already embodied, already in place. It needs to be met in your body, wherever your symptom arises. By feeling the symptom, we feel the buried truth. The body trembles, aches, heats, or releases. The backlog discharges, the nervous system updates, and the shadow integrates. This is not something we force, it is something we permit. And when we create safety, structure, and presence, the psyche naturally delivers what is ready now to be felt. So why does healing look like illness? And this is why things often get worse before they get better. Once you understand, as you understand that the backlog is moving through, symptoms will flare, old charges will arise, old repressed emotions and neurocircuits and survival mechanisms that have been frozen are now thawing back into action. The system shakes off what was interrupted and held. It's not relapse, it's completion. It's the very process of healing disguised as illness. And to the untrained eye, flares, symptoms, going through this process looks like failure. To us, it's progress because it's cyclical. And if you look at the videos here, you'll begin to understand why. You are not going back. People think they're getting better and worse. No, each time you experience what we're talking about in the body, you discharge some of that shadow material and you're getting better, even though your symptoms might feel worse for a period of time. Every flare, therefore, is the integration sign that something long buried is finally being updated, moving and completing. Mind-body illness is not only physical, it is existential. It reveals the places we have lived inauthentically, by necessity, through adaptation, because of our early life experience, as I said. It shows us where we have worn masks, silenced our truth, silenced ourselves and drifted from our instinct. Healing is this return to authenticity. It is living no longer from this person we've had to become, this persona, this false self, but from our true self. It is no longer carrying the backlog of the past, but feeling life as it is in the present, true to us. And when authenticity is restored by doing this work, naturally you will come back online to yourself. Symptoms no longer need to speak. Energy will flow freely and the system will just naturally balance itself. Nature is a blueprint. You only have to look outside to see that. Your body isn't broken. It's following this blueprint. Nature is designed to return us to equilibrium. So everything, weather patterns, the ecosystem, and every symptom is part of this attempt. Every flare is part of that process. The only thing that interrupts it is repression. And when we stop repressing, when we allow what arises to be felt, understanding that it's actually safe and it's what we want, and that we understand the mechanisms, it becomes tolerable. And the system does what it was always designed to do. It updates, it discharges, and it restores balance over the months and the period of time it takes to do this, probably years for most of us. And this is the work we do here. We create the conditions for nature to complete what was interrupted, to integrate what was exiled, and to bring us back to wholeness, back to ourselves. So how do we get sick? Well, we get sick from trauma that froze, through oppression that we silence, through acculturation that forced us into roles that weren't ours, to masks, through attachment wounds that taught us to exile parts of ourselves. We get sick through backlog, through decades of unfelt emotion stored in the body, waiting. Symptoms appear not because the body is broken, but because the psyche is insisting on balance. Finally, it cannot take the load any longer. They are not malfunctions, they are messages, and they are messages and messengers. The message is the emotion, is what's in the shadow, and the messengers are your symptoms. Listen to them, let them be delivered, and we'll explain here throughout the site how that's worked. The symptoms are the unfinished emotions themselves, surfacing now through the body. And how do we heal? By allowing nature to take its course, by creating safety to feel what was once unbearable, by letting the body complete the cycles it began long ago, by returning to authenticity and living in alignment and coherence with our true self and our true nature. This is not about brain retraining, biohacking, or overriding biology. This is about the mind, the deeper mind, the psyche. And guess what? The brain will naturally retrain, reorganize, as will the nervous system when you do this work. When the psyche is met, the shadow integrates, the backlog clears, and the system returns to its blueprint: balance, coherence, and wholeness. This is how we got sick, and this is how we heal.